I think there's a lot of stigma surrounding ADHD.
Go!
It's good if we can all talk about it and educate each other on the subject. Hopefully by telling my story and telling some other people's stories, we'll be able to normalise it a bit more.
Growing up constantly, you'd be thinking, why am I always felt a little bit different, like I didn't quite feel like I connected or fitted in. And then once I did get the diagnosis, it was, yeah, like, as I said, it was relief. It was, oh, okay, this is why I feel like this is why I think like this is why I act like this. Like, it did kind of help me to understand me better.
Being so young was difficult for me to understand what's happened, and my mum had to try and explain it to me, but because she didn't know too much about it, it was very hard to explain it.
It's not a knowledge problem, it's a performance problem. Turning intentions into actions. And how I liken it, imagine your worst day. You have some things you want to do, coupled with things you have to do, but you find yourself drifting, having a hard time getting started, putting it off a little bit at a time. And before you know it, it's the end of the day. And you spent all day thinking about what you're going to do, getting ready to get ready, but you never really got to much, if anything.
I'd say the current school system doesn't match people with ADHD, with autism also. And they are included in the normal classes, and I think they should be, because it shouldn't be treated as a disorder or like as a special thing.
It's hard to say when I noticed I was different. I think growing up, I always had this feeling that I was slightly different or wired a bit differently to everyone else. I was quite bright. I passed my GCSEs. I went to college and got good grades at college. I went to university and got a good grade at university. And I think it was really when I came out of that and then had the rest of the expectations and pressures of adult life, I think that was when it really started to get more difficult.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder has been misunderstood since its discovery in 1798. Scottish physician Alexander Crichton originally described people with the condition as being easily distracted and unable to focus on one thing for extended periods of time. Since then, we have gradually gained more knowledge of ADHD and how to treat it. But there is still a large amount of stigma surrounding it.
The numbers of people diagnosed with ADHD or like other things on the spectrum, it has highly increased, which I think has mainly to do with the awareness that a lot of people get tested nowadays. I think it's always been there, but it's just we see it more now that we know more about it. People my age, especially my friends who are mostly teachers, they're very aware of the problems that come with ADHD. They are very aware of how to treat these people and how to include them in a class. A big stigma is that ADHD kids are lazy or that they are not as smart as other kids, which is not true. It's just, as we said, they have different ways to learn, or they most of the time never get a chance to experience different ways to learn and show what they think. I think, like, especially like Scandinavian schools, I think they have a very different approach on things. They do a lot more like craftsmanship. They do a lot more with their hands. I think they concentrate more on the abilities and the strengths of the kids. Especially in Germany, we very much concentrate on the scientific subjects like maths, chemistry, biology, subjects that might be not like the ones that they're the best at. If this is the main focus, obviously all the kids that have like other abilities or other strengths, they are kind of left behind.
Scandinavian schools are known for focusing on a student's individual strengths. This promotes a positive attitude towards learning by encouraging what they are good at or enjoy the most. Many countries, England being one of them, don't use this method and instead focus on core subjects like English, maths, and the sciences, because it looks good on their reports to have high numbers of students achieving in these areas. Moving to a strengths-based model would not only benefit atypical children, but would be extremely beneficial for neurodiverse students. It's not likely to change anytime soon, but change starts with educating people on these neurological differences.
When I was in primary school and secondary school, I was taking SEN classes, but I never really understood what it was about. And my parents, they really wouldn't go further into it. So when I left school and I started going to college, I went to the doctor myself to try and understand myself a bit better. And then I kind of got kicked out of my family home because of that, because my dad didn't want someone who wasn't normal.
Not a lot of my family know fully what ADHD is, and they sometimes get frustrated with me really quickly, and then all of a sudden they have to take a step back and think, hang on a minute, these ADHD might be troubling him, so we have to calm down and take a step back, which is really good when they do that.
A lot of neurodivergent people think in a very different way and work in a very different way, and the normal sort of structure of school is to sit down, you're talked at, look at the teacher and do this and do that, and a lot of neurodivergent people really struggle with that. You know, a lot of them need movement, they need breaks to get up and walk around, they need time to process things, they need assistance to focus them, they need more gentle starts to things, they need allowances for if they're late or if they've forgotten their books. Even uniform, like, you know, the whole school system is you've got to wear your uniform, you've got to wear this, you've got to have it this way. Yet someone with ADHD or autism might actually really struggle with that. The school uniform might be irritating them, and that's all they're going to think about. You know, it's too tight round their throat. They're going to be hyper-focusing on that rather than actually listening and learning. So I think there's a lot of things that could be changed in schools, which actually are probably quite simple things. Schools just don't have A, the resources, B, the staff, C, the funding, you know, to do a lot of things that could make life so much easier for people with ADHD and other neurodivergencies.
In Norse Consulting, we've got a team of architects, technologists, interior designers, and we'll work through that brief to ensure that the classrooms have good lighting, are comfortable temperature, acoustically those rooms are sound, so they can hear everything that's happening, they don't feel overwhelmed, they feel calm. And then you build in all the ancillary bits around that. For ADHD specifically, we will look to create pockets of space that we call them inclusion spaces. So these are spaces where if people feel overwhelmed or overstimulated, they can go to those spaces, regulate, and then when they're ready, return to their normal mainstream classrooms. From a teaching perspective, the more children are able to self-regulate, the more they're going to be able to focus on the education part for all of the children, rather than needing to divert attention to a single child. That's going to mean that every child in the classroom is going to get more education time, more learning time. They're all going to feel more regulated and more at ease in their classroom situation.
ADHD's had a big impact on me because I found it difficult to sit still in class, and I found it very boring and understimulating just staring at a whiteboard for hours on end of the day. I think I was very restless and I had a lot of this built up energy, and because I don't think I was expressing that energy in a good way, I felt very anxious. And I also think because I struggled with maybe following things as easily as other people, then I felt a lot of shame. I think shame's probably the one thing I've struggled with the most, be it because I've, impulsively done something that I unintentionally hurt someone's feelings, like my partner. It's great if you're doing this project or you're starting a new company or you have an amazing idea and you can be very creative, but at the same time, I think it can be quite destructive to your friends and families around you.
If I'd be on crutches, you'll notice the crutches in any situations, but that's one of the difficulties helping people understand ADHD, because it's really hard to see. Loved ones, teachers, coworkers, collaborators, they'll notice people on their best days when they're really focused, they're really interested, they're having a good day, really productive. Or even something, you'll hear more about kids, how can they have an attention problem if they can play a video game all day or Dungeons and Dragons? And that's where even the name is a little bit of a misnomer. Really not an attention deficit. It's an attention allocation problem, being able to shift between things, including taking care of other people. Making sure our pets get to the veterinarian, our children get to the pediatrician. It's really, adulthood is an endurance race. And so that's where, ADHD gets in the way of being able to maintain that pace over time. Not 100%, but it punctuates it enough that can cause a lot of problems in one's life.
People with ADHD, no one's the same. Everyone who's got ADHD is different in some way. They react differently to different situations. Some are really outgoing and over-exuberant, whereas other people can be very withdrawn and quiet. Hyperactivity isn't always about someone bouncing off the walls. It can be more about the brain rather than the body. Everyone with ADHD's brain works very differently and my son kind of explains it as it's constantly on the go. There's always something, and it's quite hard to focus on the things that you need to focus on sometimes because there's always so much else going on in the brain. Stress can really exacerbate the ADHD symptoms as well. My son has just recently been doing his coursework for his degree, and he gets so stressed and overwhelmed that he'll get to like a week before and he just can't cope with life at all. So he needs a lot of help and support. Little things that he probably normally wouldn't get overwhelmed about become big things, and he will get overwhelmed. He won't leave the house or anything like that when he's got deadlines. And it's all about building strategies, isn't it? I think, I'm dyslexic, and I didn't find out until I was at university. Like, my whole life has been building strategies to enable me to cope. And, that's what I teach both my children. That, okay, you find this difficult, so let's find a way we can make it easier for you. So strategies are really a really important thing, I think, for anybody with neurodivergence, or well, for anybody in life really, but it's a lot more helpful to sort of put these things in place.
Maintaining a daily routine and staying on top of life essentials, like eating healthily, exercising, or visiting the doctor, might seem easy to most people. But for people with ADHD, it can be extremely difficult to stay on top of. Individually, these daily tasks may not seem like much, but the cumulative effect can become overwhelming and start to cause issues. It's true that all people struggle to juggle these tasks, but for the neurodiverse, it is exceptionally more difficult.
The thing that leaves people thinking that, oh, I do that, so everybody has a little ADHD. Well, it's because the difficulties writ large for adults with ADHD that are very impairing are familiar. They rhyme with what everybody faces day to day. Trying to gear up, get motivated to do something you don't feel like doing, timeliness, juggling different roles, sometimes getting overscheduled, sometimes saying, oh, I didn't get to this today, which are all valid. But the thing with ADHD is it's more frequent, more intense, and cutting through more domains of life and being problematic, impairing, which is also one of the diagnostic criteria for ADHD. It has to be interfering with life in some way.
Many people believe ADHD is a made-up condition and those that have it are just lazy. The truth is, we are only just understanding the nuances of ADHD and how it can interfere with people's lives. A common analogy is that having ADHD is like playing a video game on the hardest setting.
There's a whole host of things that people say about ADHD that are just not true. And that comes from a lack of understanding. Years ago, things like schizophrenia and personality disorders were thought to be like demonic possession. And it's only now that we understand them that we treat these people and we don't judge them so much. I think we're just at the start of that journey with ADHD. I think we are now understanding it more, but we've still got a long way to go.
I think with regards sort of society, people need to be more educated about people with neurodivergency, because it's not that people need to change or people need to mask to fit into society. It's society needs to change to understand how, everyone is different. A square peg is never going to fit in a round hole unless you break it. And I think society needs to be more understanding and more educated to stop people getting broken. The way to do that is through education, fixing the system rather than trying to fix the person, because the person isn't broken, they're just different. And we need to accommodate those differences rather than actually making them change to fit into the round hole. It's not a condition, it's not a flaw, it's not a problem. It's actually a superpower, and with the right support, you can do anything.
It's really good that
they're paying attention more now.
Absolutely, more awareness is really helpful. Otherwise, it's just seen as, well, they're a naughty child. They were naughty at school. They're naughty at home, and that's a terrible way for children to experience themselves as, I'm just naughty. Why can't I stop poking my sister or pulling her hair?
We need people who can think differently, think outside the box, and just not go along with the same dogma every time. Like, if you can find people who think outside the box and you've got different solutions to the same problems, and through these different solutions, it helps. You need people who are neurotypical as well, because that's the day-to-day how everything normally runs, like everything keeps going the same way, but you also need them people who can see it from a different angle and see if there's a way to improve or see if there's any deficiencies within model.
In schools now, I think schools should really, if somebody's got a disability, they should maybe talk about it a bit more and try and make the other children understand. And then, like for instance here, I've tried to make other managers and my work colleagues to try and understand me as a person and the whole concept of ADHD, But any disability, I think we should try and get it in the workplace for sure and in schools, yeah.
The twice as hard is half as much. Some of the hardest working people I see have ADHD because it takes them a little longer to read the assigned chapter. They're spending, when they don't get as much work done at the office, they're using their personal time in the evening or on the weekends or on holidays, trying to catch up with things. So this is not caring and not working hard, but it's just wanting a little more predictable cause and effect.
Working in the education sector is particularly rewarding because of the end users and the impact that we can have. Neurodiversity comes in all shapes and forms. They're going to have access to more inclusive education environments that are just going to help them regulate throughout the day. And the positive moves that we make within our community is something that will last.